Well, let's talk more about those events in Raqqa with Guney Yildiz. He's a fellow with the European Council on Foreign Relations and has, in fact, just come back from Raqqa and northern Syria. Welcome to you, Guney. And you've just been telling me off air while that report was going out that actually you know two of the women who are in the picture in our wall behind us.
Yes, actually. One of the women at the centre, very centre, is called Rojda, and she's the overall commander of the SDF forces in Raqqa. So I went to see her to understand their military strategy. It was 2 weeks ago, and at that point ISIS was surrounded in two areas, the main hospital and a stadium nearby. And we heard that this morning the main hospital was cleared. And I've seen drone pictures showing how ISIS dug lots of tunnels, and you can see the entrance and exits of those tunnels around. It was the case for the last few weeks. ISIS was there, and SDF forces was moving very slowly because ISIS had so many civilians with them. But today, after also some deals, they cleared the whole city.
What was it like when you were there? And as you say, you went and you saw some of the areas where ISIL had been cleared from, but how intense was the fighting at that time?
On my first day there, the remaining ISIS fighters tried to block the siege, so they started a really large-scale attack on SDF forces, burning down lots of stuff around in order to hide themselves from the aerial view and aerial bombardment. But it didn't work, and 2 days later, this time they started attacking from outside. Around 100 ISIS fighters attacked from outside, coming from the regime areas, apparently, killing at least 29 people, including a British citizen called Mehmet Aksoy. And that didn't work as well. They couldn't break the siege. But one interesting thing was whenever an area is cleared or captured from ISIS, people start moving in, almost immediately. So you see people, trying to find their homes just 2-3 kilometers away from where the fighting is taking place. I've seen shops, for example, selling lots of goods. So it's amazing how traders find out where it is cleared and supply those things.
Yeah, people are very resourceful, aren't they, in times of desperation. How will what is left Raqqa now, how is it going to be governed, and how do the people there want it to be governed?
Well, I've met lots of people there, and the main discussion actually in Europe and some other places is that the SDF is a Kurdish-led organization, whether they will be accepted in Raqqa. But when you speak to ordinary people on the ground, they don't necessarily talk about in ethnic terms. These people went through the regime, where an anti-democratic regime under Assad regime, and then Free Syrian Army groups, Al-Nusra and Daesh. And now what they care about most is whether they'll be governed and they'll have a secure environment. And I've spoken to lots of people in Aynisa camp, which is 40-50 kilometers north of Raqqa, where most people from Raqqa took shelter in. And they were also saying, we're waiting, maybe in a few weeks we'll go back to our homes. But the one problem is the very city center is heavily damaged, not only just with the latest fighting, but throughout the time in ISIS. So from now on, the most important issue will be rebuilding the city, and that's where foreign donors or European countries will come in and play more influence. And I've been to other areas where the SDF forces took long ago, like Manbij and other places, where the almost 80% Arab population, Manbij, and the city's population is increasing from 35,000 to hundreds of thousands now. So the system there was mostly accepted, and people weren't talking about in ethnic terms, and I didn't see much resentment among the population.
Because what is interesting is that I spoke to an activist who was from Raqqa and now lives in Berlin. I spoke to him in the last hour, and he was saying that actually there are many people within Raqqa who don't regard the Syrian Democratic Forces as liberators. They see them more as another occupying force come to take over their city.
I think the main priority of people is whoever is going to provide them with security and provide services. But there are many people in Raqqa at the moment, and there are maybe political groups. And in Aynisa, there's a Raqqa Civilian Council, which is composed of also many important tribal leaders. So Raqqa is composed of also, people in the city, but also tribal leaders around. So several of those tribal leaders actually joined in forces with SDF.
Guney, I'm sorry to interrupt you because we are actually going to Baghdad, because I think we can hear now the Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi.
Of course.